In this series, today's class is on happiness or well-being. Let's know how psychologists define happiness. When we say happiness, which words are coming in your mind? Smile, laughing, joy, or many other terms. So, in today's class, let's know how psychologists define happiness. Diener and his associate in 2009 categorized different theories in three categories. They said some scholars focused on need and goal satisfaction theories like humanistic perspective. I think you can easily recall need hierarchical theory, in which Abraham Maslow mentioned that first we fulfill our basic needs like physiological needs, safety needs, love belonging needs, and then only we have self esteem and self actualization. So, we are growing once we fulfill our basic needs. Other scholars focus more on process and activity theories. For example, they are saying that when we are doing certain activities, then during that process we are happier. For example, during flow. Flow is an activity in which we involve fully. Gratitude, thanksgiving activities. So, they focused more on processes, on activities. Third group scholars focused more on genetic and personality disposition theories. They are saying that happiness as a trait, as well as there are various traits which are positively correlated with happiness and some other are negatively correlated with happiness, and they focused on happiness and related factors. So, various scholars, various definitions, various ways of assessing or measuring someone's happiness we have. So, let us know one by one all theories, how they are defining happiness and ways of measuring someone's happiness. In this series, first model is subjective well-being, hedonic perspective or well-being or happiness we can say. As per this perspective, a person's main objective in life is to experience as much pleasure as possible while generally avoiding any painful experiences. It means if we are experiencing pleasure in our life and avoiding pain experiences, then we have happiness level. And for assessing or measuring this type of happiness, we take all together all things, and then we ask participants, taking all things together, how would you say things are these days? Would you say you are very happy or very unhappy? Scale your response. So, then scale is very unhappy to very happy. So, for example, if someone is saying my score is 2 on this scale, so then we will say his happiness level is low. On the other hand, if person is saying by considering all things of his life, his score is 6 or 7, then we will say this person is very happy. And in this case, we are not taking into account different domains. We are not asking in terms of your family, in terms of your occupation, in terms of your study, but here it is overall view of your life, and then as per this overall view of your life, what is level of your happiness. Next scholars expanded this model a little bit more. They said cognitive and affective evaluation of life is happiness, and they said experiencing pleasant emotions or positive emotions. When we are saying there are two components, one is cognitive evaluation, that is life satisfaction, and another one is affective evaluation, that is positive emotions and lack of negative emotions is your level of happiness. So, when we say cognitive evaluation, how people evaluate their own lives in terms of cognitive explanations. So, how do they experience or how do they evaluate different sector of their life in terms of satisfaction? Plus positive affect or positive emotion, various positive emotions, feelings and moods that we frequently experience and easily recognize. And total model is high if we have high score on life satisfaction and positive affect and low score on negative affect, then that is our high level of happiness. I think if we connect it with some psychological test, then you have better understanding, because you would find there are various psychological tests to measure someone's happiness. Why it's so? Why don't we have only one psychological test and say this is your level of happiness? Because different scholars have different definitions, different scholars had different theories, and as per these theories they develop their psychological test. When we say operational definition of a construct, and that should be highly correlated and connected or associated with psychological test. So, this series is actually connection between theory and related psychological test. That is why we have number of theories as well as number of psychological tests to assess someone's happiness level, or maybe in next chapters we will talk about flow, resilience and other constructs. So, meanwhile, let us concentrate on happiness. So, if we just count overall view of your life, and that is our theoretical explanation of happiness, then our questions in a psychological test should be related, and we call it construct validity. So, at the time of test construction, we usually get assurance to have same questions which are connected with operational definition or a theory of this particular construct. If we say theoretical explanation of happiness is overall view of our life, then these questions would be appropriate to test someone's happiness. For example, first question is, in general I consider myself not very happy person 1 and a very happy person 7. Compared with most of my peers, I consider myself less happy 1 and 7 on this scale is more happy. Next question is, some people are generally very happy. They enjoy life regardless of what is going on, getting the most out of everything. To what extent does this characterization describe you? Not at all, to a great deal, that is 7-1. Fourth question, some people are generally not very happy. Although they are not depressed, they never seem as happy as they might be. To what extent does this characterization describe you? I think we need to understand several points here. Number 1, you can easily count that it is talking about our overall happiness level. Second, in comparison of others, what is our level of happiness? So, most of the time when we evaluate our happiness level, we take into account other surrounded people in our life. Third point, which is very important here, is fourth question is a negative question. If you know about psychology, you must be knowing that in psychological test we have composition of negative and positive items most of the time, and first we get raw data and then we get score data, and during scoring we do reverse scoring of negative items most of the time. So, fourth item would be reversed item here. So, in this case, by considering your overall well-being as well as your happiness level in comparison to others, we are considering here, and then total score is your happiness level. If we take into account another model, that is life satisfaction plus positive emotion minus negative emotion. In that sense, we have to have a questionnaire based on life satisfaction and positive emotions. For example, in number of studies, scholars have used satisfaction with life scale plus positive and negative affect PANAS scale developed by Watson and his associate in 1988. By taking these two psychological tests, then they test level of happiness based on subjective well-being. This second model focus more on happiness plus meaning in life. Aristotle described the deeper and more balanced style for the good life. Eudaimonia literally meaning having a good guardian spirit. If we possess of true well-being, that is our psychological well-being. Eudaimonic well-being or psychological well-being is developing the best in oneself plus belonging to and serving institutions larger than oneself. It includes various factors. A person is truly happy when he was what is worth desiring, living according to virtues and values, fulfilling one's potential. So, I think you can easily connect with previous theory in which we are just saying feeling pleasure evaluating our life as satisfied one. On the other hand, in this model we give more importance to meaning in life, give importance to virtues and values, and the way where we fulfill our potentiality and program to grow, and we observe we are growing in our life. For developing this model, Riff for her associates develop a new model called psychological well-being. When she developed this model, she reviewed the literature and studied all scholars' positive factors work in psychology. For example, mental health by Jahoda, individuation by Carl Jung, self-actualization by Maslow, full functioning person by Rogers, maturity or positive personality traits by Allport, executive processes of personality, basic life tendencies, personal developmental by Erik Erikson, will to meaning by Frankl. So, they considered all those factors which were existing in psychology literature, and then they proposed 6-factor model. First factor is self acceptance, positive evaluation of oneself and one's past life. So, when we accept ourselves, our present as well as our past life, and good and bad points, all acceptance if we have about our personality, then we have one positive characteristics which is contributing to happiness. Second one is personal growth, a sense of continued growth and development as a person, that is a second factor. Third is purpose in life, the belief that one's personal life is purposeful and meaningful. And fourth one, positive relations with others. The possession of quality relations with others is very important. Even in new reports, in cross cultural researches, in World Happiness reports and all other reports, they are taking into account a construct, that is social inclusion versus social exclusion. If you perceive you are not part of your community or your society, then that is called social exclusion. On the other hand, if you perceive you are very much part of your community, very much part of your society, that is called social inclusion. Social inclusion is positively correlated with happiness. Next factor is environmental mastery, the capacity to manage effectively one's life and surroundings in the world. So, if you find everything whatever you want to do in your life, you are capable to do, then you have one component of happiness. Next is autonomy, a sense of self-determination. So, if you have full power, intrinsic motivation, whatever you want to do in your life able to do, then you have higher level of well-being. I think both the models clear to you. First one, hedonic tradition or hedonic model, or can say subjective well-being, and another one is eudaimonic tradition or model, that is psychological well-being. So, some scholars actually combined these two models and then they proposed flourishing theory or well-being theory, and then they said by including these two independent theories, we may have further developed theories in psychology, and they consider in the same theory cognitive and affective component or life satisfaction, pleasure attainment and pain avoidance, plus self acceptance, autonomy, personal growth, purpose in life, environmental mastery, positive relationship with others, etc. And then they propose their theory. For example, Dinner and his associates in 2009, they proposed new theory called flourishing and well established psychological test now we have. So, in this case their idea is hedonia and eudaimonia, they are sharing their percentage of variance. To some extent they are connected with each other. If they have connection, then why not by combining these two models we generate new model. And in this model they said social psychological functioning, which includes purpose and meaning, supportive relationships, engagement, contribution to well-being of others, competence, self-acceptance, optimism and being respected. And they proposed actually these are main factors which are contributing to the flourishing. And in their psychological test, all these factors oriented items or questions we have to measure someone's well-being. Because a recent study of over 13,000 people suggests that pursuing engagement or meaning are more strongly related to well-being than pursuing pleasure. So, that is why if we combine both the views, then we can better understanding on flourishing. More than that, another theory is on mental health, which is proposed by Keyes. In this model, by including psychological well-being, which we have already discussed, emotional well-being, which we have already discussed, or subjective well-being we can say, and he actually included his own model, that is social well-being. And by combining all these three, he said that is our mental health level. So, I think you can easily understand psychological well-being and emotional well-being, because we have already discussed about them. On the other hand, social well-being, which is new model, or Keyes his original model, and he has included here and saying that social acceptance, social integration, social growth, social contribution, and by having social coherence, we may have better understanding of mental health, in which we are including positive functioning which is a combination of psychological well-being and social well-being, and positive feelings, which is emotional well-being. So, his broadly his model is psychological well-being plus social well-being plus emotional well-being. Let us know these three models once again, in which we have some items also, so that you can easily connect what kind of questions could be asked if we have this particular factor to understand happiness. So, here elements or factors we have, and then some sample items. Some of these items are negative items. So, you know, if you have high score on negative item, it means you have lesser level of self acceptance or lesser level of that particular element. So, let us take one by one all these factors to understand a little bit more their definitions and how it reflects in various items or questions which can be used in a psychological test to assess level of your well-being. First factor is self acceptance. Possess positive attitude towards the self, acknowledge and accept multiple aspects of self, feel positive about past life. So, self acceptance means when you accept all aspects of your life and you perceive yourself positively when you are thinking about your past and you have attitude toward yourself. Questions related to this element or this factor are, I like most part of my personality. So, if you say high score, it means you have high level of self acceptance. On the other hand, when I look at the story of my life, I am pleased with how things have turned out so far. Again, high score means good thing. In many ways, I feel disappointed about my achievements in life. That is negative question. So, if you say disappointed in your life, it means low self acceptance you have. Next factor is personal growth. Have feelings of continued development and potential and are open to new experiences, feel increasingly knowledgeable and effective. So, personal growth means when you feel or you experience every day you are growing. Question related to this factor are, for me, life has been a continued process of learning, changes and growth. In this case, we are talking about the process in which we are learning, changing and growing. Second question is, I think it is important to have new experiences that challenge how I think about myself and the world. So, new experiences included there. Third, which is negative question, I gave up trying to make big improvements, changes in my life a long time ago. So, you gave up in your life and that is why that is not in personal growing side. Next factor is purpose in life. Have goals and a sense of direction in life. Past life is meaningful, hold beliefs that give purpose to life. So, in this case, if you find purpose in your life as well as when you perceive your past, you observe that your life has been meaningful. Some questions related to it. Some people wander aimlessly through life, but I am not one of them. And that is, if you have aimless life means there is no purpose, and definitely that the question is negative one. Next is, I live life one day at a time and do not really think about the future. Next one, I sometimes feel as if I have done all there is to do in life, and again that is negative question. So, if we have high score on first and low score on last two, then we have higher level of purpose in life, and to some extent you can easily connect how these are contributing to purpose in our life. Next factor is environmental mastery. Feel competent and able to manage a complex environment, choose or create personally suitable community. So, you are able to actually master your environmental conditions. So, then you have higher level of well-being. The demand of everyday life often get me down. So, not able to meet your demands, everyday demands, then you have lower level of environmental mastery. In general, I feel I am in charge of the situation in which I live, and if you have charge of your life, charge of your environmental conditions, then definitely you have high level of environmental mastery. I am good at managing the responsibilities of daily life. So, if you are able to manage your daily life opportunities or daily life responsibilities, then you have higher level of environmental mastery. Next factor is autonomy. They are self-determining, independent and regulated internally, resist social pressure to think and act in certain ways, evaluate self by personal standards. Questions related to these factors are: I tend to be influenced by people with strong opinions. That is negative questions. So, if you are changing your lifestyle as per others' opinions and not giving much importance to your own autonomy or thinking style, then you have lower level on autonomy. I have confidence in my own opinions even if they are different from the way most other people think. So, this question lead to higher autonomy. Next questions are related to social well-being. I think we should understand it in detail because we are addressing at least social well-being first time. It is not like psychological well-being and emotional well-being which we have to some extent explored earlier also. So, in this case first factor is social acceptance. Have positive attitudes toward oneself. Acknowledge others and generally accept people despite others sometimes complex and confusing behaviors. So, others acceptance is main here with even though they may have some complex and confusing environment, but still you accept others. Question related to this factor: people who do a favor expect nothing in return, that is your trait. People do not care about other people's problem, that is negative question. I believe that people are kind, that is positive question. So, if you have high score on first and third and low score on the middle one, then you have high level of self acceptance. Next factor is social actualization. Care about and believe society is evolving positively. Think society has potential to grow positively. Think safe society is realizing potential. So, you could easily connect it with self actualization. Here about the society, is it growing every day? So, social actualization means when we perceive the society is growing, society is evolving and it is realizing its potentiality. In questions related to this factor are: the world is becoming a better place for everyone, that is positive question. Society has stopped making progress, as well as society has not improved for people like me. So, both questions are negative. If you perceive like that, then you have lesser level or lower level of self actualization. Next factor is social contribution. Social contribution means feel they have something valuable to give to the present and to the society, think their daily activities are valued by their community, and it means you contribute and you feel you are able to contribute in your community or in your society. Questions related to this factor are: I have something valuable to give to the world. So, you think you are contributing to your society or you are contributing to your community. Second question is: my daily activities do not create anything worthwhile for my community, as well as I have nothing important to contribute to society. So, both questions are negative questions. So, if you have low score on last two and high score on the first, in which we are saying valuable to give the world, that is your perception, then you have high level of social contribution or high score in this factor. Next is social integration. Feel part of community, think they belong, feel supported and share commonalities with community. So, in this case questions are, I do not feel I belong to anything I would call a community. Definitely that is negative question. I feel close to other people in my community is a source of comfort. So, if you feel your community is a source of comfort as well as you have close relationship with others or close relationship with your community, on the other hand you do not feel you have not belongingness to your community. So, then you have high level of social integration during assessment. Next factor is emotional well-being. To some extent you know, but let us revise previous information here. It is combination of positive affect, negative affect, life satisfaction and happiness. Positive affect, experience symptoms that suggest joy and happiness for life. For example, during the last 30 days, how much of the time did you feel cheerful, in good spirit, extremely happy, calm and peaceful, satisfied and full of life. So, for studying someone's positive affect, we may have questions related to these items and then can assess level of your positive affect. Negative affect, absence of symptoms that suggest that life is undesirable and unpleasant. Question related to this factor, during the last 30 days, how much of the time did you feel so sad that nothing could cheer you up, nervous, restless, hopeless, that everything was an effort worthless. So, you can easily manage here or can see all items are negative items. So, if you perceive like that your life, then you have lower level of emotional well-being. Next factor is life satisfaction, a sense of contentment, peace and satisfaction from small discrepancies between wants and needs with accomplishments and attainments. So, it means we perceive our life satisfied, peaceful, contentment and we do not have much discrepancies between our wants and needs. So, questions for this factor, during past 30 days, how much of the time did you feel satisfied or full of life? And some questions are like that, overall these days how satisfied are you with your life, 0 to 10, where 0 is terrible and 10 is delighted. Satisfaction may be measured in life domains, for example, work, home, neighborhood, health, intimacy, finance, parenting etc. or in some cases we just talk about global level of globally, or by considering overall view of your life, how your life is satisfied, how much it is satisfied. That could be one question in which we are interested to know global level of your life satisfaction. On the other hand, in some cases we may take more interest in particular areas, for example, your life satisfaction in terms of work, in terms of home, in terms of relationship, in terms of health, in terms of intimacy, in terms of parenting or many other domains of our life. Last factor is happiness, having a general feeling and experience of pleasure, contentment and joy. And for this question, overall these days how happy are you and your life? How frequently have you felt joy, pleasure, happiness in the past week or sometime we say month or year as per our requirement. So, I think now all three models are very clear to you, because in this case we have taken the definitions once again of all those factors which are existing in these three main domains, that is psychological well-being, that is social well-being and that is emotional well-being, and we have taken some sample items also. So, how your level of happiness as per these factors would be evaluated as per these questions or questions which we usually use in psychological test. and this information has been taken from Positive Psychology book. Reference has been given in this slide. Now, next point here is, after having all those things, how would we differentiate among people in which category they are? You should know that your score alone hasn't any information. For example, I am saying that happiness level is say 20, your well-being level is say 25, or maybe mental health level is say 55. And your next question would be, what does it mean? Am I happy or less happy, or have higher level of happiness, or what is it? So, what is interpretation of these scores? So, for knowing these further messages, we divide total population on the basis of norms which we developed from the same population, as well as sometime we have some other notions. For example, in this case we are able to say that when person is languishing or sluggish or having very low level of mental health, or when he has moderate level, or in which situation he would be flourishing or having very high level of mental health. So, in this case keys identified as per your response rates. I think before saying say 1 emotional well-being plus 6 positive functioning, let us know a little bit more about this mental health continuum psychological test. I think that is clear to you. In this case we have psychological well-being and its 6 facets or 6 factors, social well-being 5 factors, and emotional well-being 3 factors. So, if we add 6 plus 5 plus 3, then total number of items would be 14. Out of 14, where 3 items are related to emotional well-being and 11 items are related to positive functioning, combination of psychological well-being and social well-being. So, in this case he is saying that if you have say 1 emotional well-being and 6 out of 11 here positive functioning almost every day or every day, it means highest score on at least 1 item out of 3 on emotional well-being and 6 out of 11 on positive functioning, which is combination of psychological well-being and social well-being. So, in that case you are flourishing in your life. On the other hand, it is just opposite of it, 1 emotional well-being out of 3 and 6 positive functioning out of 11, you are saying never or once or twice, then you are languishing or sluggish or having very low level of mental health. On the other hand, if you have say mixture of both, then you are at moderate level. So, this is the way to define our mental health continuum, in which we are saying that at first level we have mental disorders, and then we have we are languishing, and then next is moderate level of mental health, and then flourishing, and its psychological resources these are. We had one recent research paper. By following this particular model, we observed that, however, this data was from Delhi private schools. So, we cannot generalize it to Indian adolescents population, but still in this research we get very promoting results, and we found that 46.4% Indian adolescents were flourishing and 51.2% were moderately mentally healthy and only 2.4% were languishing. So, that is quite good results and were comparable with the US data. However, these results cannot be generalized to Indian adolescents, because this data was from privately studying Delhi students only. After having 2 main factors here, mental illness and mental health, Keyes has proposed one model, and as per this model he said that we can divide total population in 4 categories. One, on the one side this is mental illness, and another factor here is mental health. So, by combining these 2 factors we may have 4 categories. Number 1 category, languishing and mental illness. So, you do not have high level of mental health as well as you have some mental illnesses. Another group of population or people may be flourishing and mental illness. you have certain mental illness, but still you have very high score on mental health, or can say mental illness but flourishing in your life. Third category is languishing, in which we can say you are not having any mental illness, but still not flourishing in your life and have very low score on mental health. Fourth group is flourishing, in which you do not have any problem in your life as well as you are flourishing in your life. Problem means you do not have any mental illness. So, that way actually population can be divided in different categories on the basis of mental illness and mental health. And here another model, I think just to revision of our previous model, in which we can divide here is complete mental illness, incomplete mental illness, incomplete mental health and complete mental health. Apart from previous theories, let us know different model which is significantly different from previous one, and it is more based on motivation and needs, desires. So, is proposed by Riance and Dacey in 2001, called self-determination theory of well-being. They are saying that there are certain needs. These needs should be fulfilled to have personal well-being and social development. These needs are the need for competence. It seeks to control the outcome and experience mastery. People need to gain mastery of tasks and learn different skills. Second need is need for belongingness. Involves developing secure and satisfying connections with others in one's social setting. People need to experience a sense of belonging and attachment to other people. And third need is need for autonomy. People need to feel in control of their own behavior and goals. So, if you are able to fulfill all these three needs, that is competence. So, it means you are able to learn different tasks and you have good experiences or mastery, and belongingness to others, you have attachment in your life, you have good positive relations you have. On the other hand, autonomy, you whatever you want to do in your life, you are able to. So, if you are able to fulfill all those needs, then only you would be growing, you would be satisfied in your life, and personal well-being and social development in your life you will be having. They also connected it with intrinsically motivated. They said when people are in this optimal condition, they are intrinsically motivated, able to fulfill their potentialities and to seek out progressively greater challenges. Intrinsic motivation, which will be discussed later in detail, it means when you have your own motivation. You are not under the external factors to get motivation. For example, external or extrinsic motivation could be when you are doing certain things for marks, for doing certain things for affiliation, for social approval. On the other hand, we do certain works where we have our own interest. We want to do, and that is why we are doing. That is called intrinsically motivated people or intrinsic motivation in our life. And here our motivation is to fulfill our own potentialities, because we are programmed to grow, and that is why we want to grow, and that is why we are fulfilling all those needs to get personal well-being and social development. So, I think this theory is clear to you, in which competence, autonomy, relatedness, these are three needs. Need to be effective in dealing with the environment, need to control the course of their lives, need to have a close affectionate relationship with others. And they suggested that when people experience these three things or fulfillment of needs, because this theory is from motivation, that is why they have focused more on needs fulfillment. They become self-determined and able to do, intrinsically motivated to pursue the things that interest them. Let us take another theory, and this theory focus more on authentic happiness, proposed by Seligman in 2003. If you could recall previous lectures, in the character strengths chapter, central focus was on the pleasant life, the good life and the meaningful life. And for all these three lives, we had certain character strengths which were highly connected with pleasant life, with the good life and then meaningful life. And it was actually Seligman's first model where he proposed that there are 3 roots of happiness. First root is the pleasant life. We want to have pleasant life for getting higher level of happiness. Positive emotion, gratification was the main factors of pleasant life, and second one is the good life, in which we have engagement, flow and connected with our life. Third one is meaningful life, using your strengths in the service of something greater than yourself. When you serve in the community, time wise, maybe money wise, and you find certain meanings of your life by serving others. So, these are 3 routes to get happiness. In 2011, he revisited his theory and he proposed that PERMA model, and this PERMA is PERMA. So, in this model he is saying that positive emotions is the first factor for well-being or happiness, experiencing joy and pleasure. Second is engagement or in a flow, being consciously involved in our activities. Third is relationships, having enjoyable and supportive interactions with others. Next was meaning, creating a purposeful narrative about our lives. Fifth one, accomplishments, completing our goals and following our core values. That is fifth factor in his theory. And let us know a little bit more about these factors. So, positive emotions, when we perceive our past, future, present, all situations with positive emotions. For example, when we are perceiving our past, we have some positive emotions. When we are thinking about our future, again we have something positive in our life, and in present we are happy and healthy. So, in all sectors we have positive emotions. Second one is relationships. We have discussed relationship again and again with different theoretical background. So, building strong relationships, these are very important in family, in friends, in co-workers, neighborhood, with the children, in all sectors when we are satisfied with our relationship. Next one is accomplishment. Everyone needs to win something sometimes. So, I did it and I did it well. So, such kind of accomplishment or achievements we want to have in our life. Engagement, when we have certain activities in which we love to do and we are doing and in with full flow and without any external forces, we are happy and healthy by doing those kind of activities. Next one is meaning. There are various ways to get certain meanings, but if we have some meanings in our life, these meanings are actually helping us to have happy life. Like we may have some religious faith, we may have some community work or some work in family, maybe in politics, maybe we are doing some excellent work in our daily life, or creative goals we have, or somewhere we find meaning of our life. So, these are 5 factors which are defining our well-being. One another model by Hooper and So in 2013, and this model is actually mixture of previous models as well as some new ways they have. They are saying that there are some positive aspects of mental functioning, and they have identified these positive aspects are competence, emotional stability, engagement, meaning, optimism, positive emotion, positive relationship, resilience, self-esteem and vitality. I think you can easily connect some of these factors we have already covered with other theories. However, like resilience, optimism, vitality, these are some factors which are included by them to describe well-being theory. They claimed that this theory has both components, that is hedonic as well as eudaimonic, and by taking both criterias or both perspectives, they have proposed positive feeling and positive functioning aspects of well-being. This slide is very informative because in this slide we have only one term, but this term is defined differently by different scholars. For example, Keyes, flourishing is different, Hufert and So flourishing is different, Diener et al. Flourishing is different, Seligman et al. Flourishing is different. However, some of these factors are common in different theories. On the other hand, some other factors are unique in these theories. So, when we assess someone's flourishing level, then a reader must understand with which perspective it is, because your theory would be connected with psychological test items or questions, and then this theory oriented items or questions in a psychological test will be asked, and on the basis of this you will be having your score. So, it means when we are studying research papers based on flourishing, first of all or first topmost point here is what is operational definition of happiness, what is operational definition of flourishing. So, this operational definition is highly connected with the psychological test items, and then only you can say the composition of this flourishing is by these factors. So, that is why different psychological tests may have different level of flourishing of different people. So, that is why when we are reading research papers, we should know what is the definition of flourishing or happiness or well-being or mental health. So, that is very important for us, because there is different scholars addressing it differently. Now, some more theories. Kohn in 1991 included Western as well as some Eastern psychological concepts. Eastern psychological concepts, as you know, which I covered in initial chapters, in which we are saying that these are more religion focused, Hinduism, Buddhism, etc. So, by combining Eastern as well as Western concepts, he has proposed his theory of well-being. And in his theory, he is saying there are 5 main factors. First is efficiency. This refers to an exceptional use of one's talent skills. People who pursue excellence in specific endeavors such as sports or a professional are focused on this mode of fulfillment. Second is creativity. Again, you could easily understand that is a unique one here. So, individuals who have an artistic temperament choose this mode of fulfillment. So, these two factors saying that if you are in mode of fulfillment and fulfilling those modes, then you are happy in your life. And relatedness, like other scholars in which they are saying positive emotions or relatedness, very important factor. Here the focus is on the development of interpersonal relationships and the presence of love. So, that is common in even previous theories. However, along with these 3 factors, he has borrowed 2 specifically from Asian or Eastern cultures, that is self transcendence and inner harmony. With Asian model, we will discuss about inner harmony. In this mode, the focus is on psychological criteria such as personality integration and the search for one's true self. On the other hand, self transcendence, the focus of this mode is on a person's relationship to God, spirit, or the ultimate ground of being. It means when we have connection with ultimate life or something which is not observable, like spirit, soul, God, etc. So, by combining all these 5 factors, he proposed well-being theory. However, he said that we may have high score on some of them and low score on other factors, and here he also focused that there is no need to combine all these 5 factor scores. That is very important for us, because in Carroll Riff model, in Seligman model, in Deci and Ryan's model, sometime even we have additive score and we say total well-being score. So, if we compare all these models here, some factors are quite common with each other, and to some extent definitions are also connected with each other. On the other hand, other factors are quite unique factors. For example, positive relationship. Almost all scholars have highlighted role of positive relationship in terms of positive relationships or relatedness, whether it is say psychological well-being, PERMA model or need model or Kohn model. So, all of them giving importance to social relations or positive relationship very much. Second one is environmental mastery, accomplishment, competence and efficiency. This is also to some extent connected with each other. Purpose in life, meaning, self transcendence can be connected with each other. Autonomy has been highlighted by psychological well-being model as well as by Deci and Ryan's model. Personal growth, inner harmony to some extent can share to some extent percentage of variance when we define. On the other hand, self acceptance, positive emotion, engagement, creativity are to some extent independent variables which are in different theories. When we cross the border and go ahead and see how well-being has been addressed by other scholars, not hardcore positive psychologists or psychology scholars, then they are actually taking into account other areas also. For example, dimensions of well-being as per World Health Organization is a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. Let us understand these factors once again. They are saying that realizes his or her own abilities. So, if you know what are your abilities and how can use your abilities. Second is can cope up with the normal stresses of life. We know we confront with various stresses in our day to day life. Are we able to cope up? That is also dimension of well-being. Can work productively and fruitfully. Are we able to contribute to our life by doing some work productively and fruitfully? And the last one is able to make a contribution to his or her community. Are we able to contribute to our society, to our community? So, these are the factors or these are the variables which decide our level of well-being. Similarly, some scholars are taking different domains to define well-being like physical, emotional, social, environment, or occupational, intellectual, spiritual, etc. So, you can easily understand that psychology scholars focusing more on psychological factors. On the other hand, other domain people are taking into account different domains to define wellness or well-being like social, environmental, occupational, emotional, intellectual, physical, spiritual, etc. So, that is why in gross national happiness domains, psychological well-being and health are the only two domains. Along with these domains, there are various other domains which are highlighted, which are taking into account to have gross national level of happiness. For example, this is one example in which they are saying there are various domains which will define our happiness like living standards, assets, housing, household per capita income. These are the main factors to have high level of happiness. Ecological diversity and resilience, in which we are talking about ecological issues, responsibility towards environment, wildlife damage especially in rural areas, urbanization issues. So, these are the issues which are contributing to the well-being or happiness when we are talking about national happiness. Community vitality, in which donation, time and money, relationship, family, safety, these factors are also important. Good governance, government performance, fundamental rights, service, political participation, such kind of factors are taking into account. Cultural diversity and resilience, in which speak native language, cultural participation, artistic skills, these are important. For education, literacy, schooling, knowledge, values are very important. Time use, work and sleep, are these balanced? That is important for us. Along with all these factors, health, that is mental health, self-reported health status, healthy days, disabilities and psychological well-being, in which they are mainly focusing on emotional well-being, life satisfaction, positive emotions, negative emotions, also broadly that subjective well-being plus spirituality. So, these are the factors which are defining gross national happiness level. That is why happiness may have various factors, and in different studies we may have different factors, and as per those factors we may define well-being of individuals, well-being of particular community, well-being of particular society, well-being of nations, or even sometime we have cross nations, cross societies or cultures comparisons on happiness. So, that is why we should know how this happiness or well-being has been defined in the particular research. We have discussed different perspectives mainly from European and Western scholars. However, these theories as well as psychological tests have been used in different cultures, in India, in Asian cultures, in European as well as in Western cultures. So, that is why we can say that was psychology of mainstream of psychology, or even can connect it with psychology in India. Let us know what do we have in Indian psychology to define happiness. There are various models which are defining happiness here, and some connected one, and most of them are focusing more on inner well-being rather on external factors. So, first of all I have identified some of these domains or factors which are connected with happiness, and let us know first these factors. However, still scope to have many more models to define happiness which are existing in our religious spiritual literature as well as Indian philosophical literature. So, from this storehouse I have identified some of them. Let us talk about them one by one. First one is Panch Koshas. Indian tradition recognize multi-layered existence of human beings. We have the potential to evolve and move towards higher level of existence, and we have koshas one by one. So, our basic level or lowest layer is physical kosha, and this is Annamaya kosh. Then we gradually move to the other levels, this Pranmaya kosh, then Manomaya kosh, then Vigyanmaya kosh, and then to the level of Anandmaya kosh, that is highest level of existence. So, I think easily you could identify all these koshas. Annamaya kosh, food seed; Pranmaya kosh, vital air seed; Manomaya kosh, that is mental seed; and Vigyanmaya kosh, knowledge seed, and then bliss body, Anandmaya level. So, if we go with all with these layers, so ultimate level is the Anandmaya kosh, and if we touch our Anandmaya kosh, then we have Sachidanand. It is also argued that human should search for inner source of happiness, that is Satchidanand, and the Satchidanand is Sat being, truth, Chit being aware of consciousness of, and Anand bliss, and that is our characterization by transformation and transcendence. So, for transformation and for transcendence we should have level of Satchidanand, Sat, Chit or Anandmaya level, and it is the our ultimate level when we are Anandmaya. So, that is our first model which is describing happiness, but you can easily connect here with the inner self, with the consciousness, and within us it is happening. Rather, there are some external factors which are defining or determining our happiness level. The purpose of knowledge is traditional terminology, therefore, is liberation from various attachments and overcoming the various kinds of suffering and ignorance. So, they are saying that a purpose of knowledge or gaining knowledge is to get liberation or mukti from various attachments. Asakti, anasakti is another model which I will discuss later, and we actually want to overcome from this suffering and ignorance or kaleshas. So, when we are able to overcome, we are able to reduce all these sufferings, then we move towards the happiness or Anandmaya level, and ultimate goal is to get mukti from the attachments or from asakti. So, when we are liberal or mukt from all these attachments, then we are actually reducing our suffering, kleshas or ignorance. And when we are moving upwards towards Anandamaya Kosh, then it is all happening within ourselves. Some scholars borrowed these terms and then they expanded understanding of Sachidanand, like Meng Ten in his book Search Inside Yourself. He said, when the mind is calm and clear, it returns to its default state, and that default state is happiness. This indicates that happiness is not something you pursue, but it is something you allow. It means, and I think if you take interest in some spiritual leaders, they have been repeating it again and again. Buddhist psychology or Buddhism, repeating it again and again. It is just like, problems or anxiety, tension, stress we have because we have thoughts related to anxiety, stress, tension. If we are away from all those thoughts, then we will be getting happiness once again. And that is why during meditation, during yogas or some other practices which are helping us to have higher level of happiness, during those processes, because we are away from the thoughts which are creating anxiety, tension, stress, that is why we are away from those thoughts, and that is why we are happy and healthy or getting happiness state in our mind. So, it means there are some ways where we are disturbing ourselves. If we learn how we can reduce this disturbance and how we can reduce thoughts which are creating anxiety, stress, tension or other problems, then easily we can learn how we could be happy. And I think this is a very important lesson from this slide, how we can maintain our happiness level or could pursue our happiness level. So, it is just like within us and no need to search it outside. Another work by Campbell in 1988, he also focused on this. He borrowed these Indian religious concept Sachidanand, and he said follow your bliss, and for following your bliss you will be getting being consciousness and blissful level, Sachidanand level. And he also identified some intra-individual clusters. In these clusters, he said positive sense of self, self-determination, energy, strength of character and relationship with others and the world would create that level of, or through this process or through by having these positive traits in our personality, we may follow our bliss or may have level of Anandamay, Sachidanand. Next factor is gunas and well-being. I think you must be knowing about Sat Guna, Rajas and Tamas Guna. These three gunas are related with or associated with well-being. That is why I think we should discuss about these three gunas. Let us know what these three gunas are and how these are correlated with well-being. It says that those who follow Sattva go upwards, the Rajas remain in the middle, and Tamasic who follow the course of the lower gunas go downwards. So, these three gunas are Sattva is the best one, Rajasic middle one, and Tamasic is highly connected with anxiety, depression, etc. The Bhagavad Gita suggests that fruit of good action is sattvic and pure, the fruit of Rajas is the pain, and fruit of tamas is ignorance. Let us know what these three gunas are so that we can connect them with well-being. Let us know gunas, their characteristics, state of mind we would have as per this particular guna, and then which activities we have during this period. And Indian religious literature giving very much importance to food, and they are saying that what kind of food we are eating, it is connected with our gunas. So, food related to particular guna. If we talk about the progress, then the style is, if you have Tamasic style, then you should strive for or try to get Rajasic. If you have Rajasic style, then you try to do Sattvic, and if you have high level on Sattvic, then Nirgunas. I will discuss further this point. So, first let us know Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. Sattva, yogi achieves by reducing Rajas and Tamas and thus makes liberation possible. Then what kind of state we would have in our mind during the Sattvic style? Sattva is a state of harmony, balance, joy and intelligence. So, during Sattvic mode, we have harmony, balance, joy in our mind. What kind of activities we have during this period? Enjoy activities and environments that produce joy and positive thoughts. And for food related to Sattvic style or Sattvic personality style, whole grains and pulses and fresh food and vegetables. Second guna is Rajas. Rajas is of attraction, longing and attachment and strong binds us to the fruit of our work. During this state, we have high level of energy, action, change and movement, and activities over exercising, overwork, loud music, excessive thinking and consuming excessive material goods. So, during this period we rely more on external locus of control or external motivation rather internal one. And food, we like fried foods, spicy food and stimulants are connected with Rajasic style. Tamasic gunas, tamas manifests from ignorance and dilutes all beings from other spiritual truths. And during this process, our state of mind is darkness, inertia, inactivity, materiality. And during this period, we are sluggish, oversleepy, overeating, inactivity, passivity, fearful situation, etc. And food connected with this style is heavy meats and foods that are spoiled, chemically treated, processed or refined foods. So, if we just try to find out what kind of food we are eating and what kind of food we are preferring and as per these foods what kind of gunas we could have in our life. So, if we compare these three gunas, I think Sattvic guna is the best one and we want to get or we strive to get Sattvic living style. Practicing yoga and leading a yogic lifestyle that is strongly connected with Sattva guna and it cultivates Sattvic style. Yogi's goals is to cultivate Sattva and to be unattached to both the good and the bad, the positive and negative qualities of all lives. So, when we are in Sattvic mode, we are not extremely in positivity or in negativity or in good or in bad, we are more balanced. I will discuss this point a little bit more in later slides. All the gunas create attachment and thus bind oneself to the ego. When one rises above the three gunas that originate in the body is and we attain enlightenment. Krishna urges Arjuna to go beyond all gunas. So, nirgunas, it means the style is or our way of getting samadhi or moksha is first tamasic to struggle for rajasic, rajasic to sattvic, and if you have quite high level of on sattvic mode then or sattvic gunas, then for getting enlightenment or samadhi or moksha, then one should be nirgunas, and that is ultimate achievement or can say self actualization in terms of can say in Hinduism. So, human nature and behavior is as much determined by the three gunas sattvic, rajasic, tamasic as the phenomenal universe. It means we can study someone's personality as per these three gunas across the board in universal wherever we want to do. For example, sattvic, rajasic, tamasic personality traits can be assessed in USA, in in European countries, in Asian cultures. So, it is not culture specific phenomena where we can say we can test sattva, rajas, tamas of Indian people only or only Asian people, but anywhere in any situation these three gunas can give us some information about someone's personality type. This association between the three gunas and well-being dimensions, at the end I will discuss number of studies in which even we have studied sattva, rajas, tamas in three cultures in USA, Czech Republic and in Indian setting, and we compared them as cross cultural research as well as how Sattva, Rajas and Tamas are correlated with well-being dimensions. And we observed that no doubt Sattvic style or Sattva Guna is positively correlated with all positive dimensions of well-being. Tamas was mainly negatively correlated with most of the well-being indicators. On the other hand, Rajasic was middle one, was correlated with some of them negatively, but with not all, and sometime we observed that it was not correlated with the certain dimensions of well-being. So, knowing gunas and how it is connected with well-being was very important for us, and that is why I selected 3 gunas when we are defining happiness and well-being. Third concept which could be borrowed from Indian religious spiritual literature is anasakti or asakti. According to the Bhagavad Gita, one sequence of mental events is that attachment lead to desire, desire lead to anger, anger lead to mindlessness, and mindlessness lead to loss of memory, and loss of memory lead to loss of life. So, if we go with this attachment style, it means it is killing our happiness, it is killing our life. On the other hand, another just opposite term is anasakt, and positive psychologists have borrowed this term, and we are trying to connect it with how it is correlated positively with well-being. So, broadly this term is asakti, anasakti. Asakti when we are attached with various things in our life, and when we are not able to, due to attachment we have desire, and if we are not able to fulfill those desires, then they create anger, mindlessness, loss of memory, loss of life, etc. On the other hand, when we are anasakt, then we are highly connected with well-being, and then we do not have any desire, anger, etc., etc. And there are some studies, at the end I will discuss about those studies also, in which they observed that yogis have higher level of anasakti as well as anasakti and its dimensions, which in recent literature we have revealed, they are positively correlated with well-being and its dimensions. Fourth concept can be borrowed here is natural desires of all human beings is to be happy at every stage and in every aspects of our life, and this has been highlighted in our culture, in our prayers, in our day to day life, like in greetings, during greetings, and we are quite close to address happiness in our life. So, for example, Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina. So, we pray let all people be happy. So, that is why happiness is very important for us, and its highest ideal of human life. Sukh Savrup we count, and in Hindu system of medicine we describe the concept of Sukh Savrup, happy life, that is required here. When we talk about the greetings which we get from our elders, and generally they say khush raho or be happy. So, again we promote or we give lots of importance to happiness. So, that is why our culture is promoting happiness, and that is very important for us. Another aspect which I have borrowed here is swastika. It stands for universal welfare, and on various occasions actually we draw this swastika in our culture. Swasti means well-being of one and all, and ka means symbol. So, thus swastika indicates happiness, safety, fertility and prosperity. The 4 corners of the swastika represents 4 purusharth, aims of life, namely dharma, arth, kam and moksha, and it perfectly symmetrically shaped indicate balanced. Also represent our 4 stages. In Indian literature or in Indian religious spiritual literature, we find 4 stages of our life, that is brahmacharya, grihasthashram, vanprasth and then sannyas, and it is reflecting here. Life connects these 4 corners together. So, then we say these all are highly connected with each other or highly correlated or associated with each other. So, connections are there. On the other hand, in mantras, if you just take any mantra, you will find that it is discussing happiness, happiness of oneself, happiness of others, environmental factors, and all other living beings. So, for example, Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina mantras, may all be happy, may all be free from diseases, may all perceive good and may not suffer from sorrow. So, such kind of prayers we have. Gayatri mantra, quite famous. Again, well-being focused this mantra is. So, that is why in Indian culture or in Indian religious spiritual literature, this is quite prominent to have happiness. Let us touch another model also, that is Ayurvedic therapy. Ayurvedic therapy or Ayurvedic model, it is mainly based on balance and imbalance in our body. Imbalance, when we have imbalance, then we may have some humors like Vata, Pitta or Kapha, and our ultimate goal is to restore this equilibrium or the balance, and when we are balanced, then we are happy and healthy, and body and mind are highly connected. In fact, we cannot study them as an independent entities. These two are connected with each other and influencing each other very much. Ayurveda means the knowledge of life, and doshas means dysfunctions or abnormal behavior, a deviation from the perfect balance. So, when we have imbalancing, and that is why Vata, Pitta and Kapha, these problems we have, and our ultimate goal through Ayurvedic medicine is to get balance again, and if we get this balance, then we have perfect life. Ayurvedic medicines try to restore the balance caused from the doshas, and according to Ayurveda, the highest virtue is balance. So, Ayurvedic model is based on the unique balance of Vata, Pitta and Kapha that determines a person's constitution, body type and mental and emotional strengths and weaknesses. So, here connections between body type, mental and emotional strengths and weaknesses are being highlighted. Two more terms have been borrowed from our religious spiritual literature, which are highly connected with the Western models to some extent and define happiness in their own way. These two terms are prayas and shreyas. Indian traditions also talks about well-being as prayas shreyas. Prayas refers to material and social level of reality, roughly correspondence to hedonic perspective, whereas shreyas refer to the transcendental level of reality, correspondence to eudaimonia perspective. So, to some extent prayers focus more on social level of reality, which is connected with subjective well-being to some extent, and shreyas connected with the psychological well-being to some extent, and it focus more on transcendental level of reality. So, ancient as well as modern sages have pointed out that shreyas is what matters ultimately. So, again like Western scholars who have given more importance to psychological well-being or on eudaimonic perspective compared to hedonic or subjective well-being. These scholars also or sages also gave more importance to the shreyas style. Indian psychology has much to offer in terms of self-growth independent of any specific religious tradition. However, most of these happenings or these messages have been borrowed from religious spiritual literature only. One of its major agenda is how to liberate human beings from the bondage of ignorance, suffering and to create social order of harmony, peace and personal growth. So, here actually focus is in inner direction more, and our objective is to get liberation, moksha, and how we can have harmony, peace, personal growth within ourselves. So, I think this point will be very clear to you. We are actually addressing more world within when we are talking about happiness in Indian context. Next concept which is borrowed here is spiritual dimension of human existence. In India, this is very important for us. This has led to the search for ultimate happiness within rather than without. Hence, the pursuit of happiness in material things and in social world is considered secondary, but primary focus is world within, or within our life, or within our mind, we can say what kind of spiritual level or dimension we have. And then they are saying that self realization, Atam Sakshatkar, that is very important, and it is contemporary concerns of positive psychology. The Indian tradition, particularly the view stressed in the Upanishad, puts emphasis on transcending all dualities, positive and negative, to reach ultimate awareness. So, they are saying that for self realization, for Atam Sakshatkar, we have to resolve all dualities in our life, not extremely positive, not extremely negative, not extremely good, not extremely bad. So, when we learn to have balanced life or balanced way of live, or middle path to some extent we can say, then that is promote to happiness. There are some Asian perspectives also, and in modern psychology, modern positive psychology, these perspectives are also highlighted a lot, and now even European Western scholars are considering these factors to define happiness. Let us understand these 2-3 terms to define happiness. First is the harmony. Harmony presupposes the existence of different things and implies a certain favorable relationship among them. And Antonella and her associates found that individuals consider psychological balance and harmony as being important for their happiness. So, I will discuss about this research, in which we had some questions, in which we had 12 countries, 13 data set, and we had data from North India as well as from South India, and in this research we observed that there are some lay definitions, and when we are talking about these lay definitions or how people are defining happiness, then we are crossing the boundaries and we are getting some more definitions and having broader list or having more terms in our basket of happiness to define happiness. Then she observed balance and harmony also very important for us. In Chinese culture, they give more importance to benevolence and helping others, we can say compassion, and giving more importance to others' happiness to some extent we can say. Benevolence is defining as controlling one's desires to conform to the decorum valued by society. And in this culture, they are saying that this is important to fulfilling one's desires. So, for fulfilling our desires, having high level of benevolence is very important as per this culture, and now scholars are taking into account this perspective. Internal state of equilibrium or balance and harmony is also highlighted in Asian cultures. When there are no steering of pleasure, anger, sorrow or joy, the mind may be said to be in the state of equilibrium or balance. So, when we do not have any agitating thoughts like pleasure, anger, sorrow, joy, then we are like calm and quiet and peaceful mind we have, and that balance is actually highlighted as harmony or internal state of balance in which we feel or we experience within ourself happiness. Peace of mind refers to the experience of internal peace and harmony, that is also taken into account by some scholars. Experience of internal peace includes affective states such as being peaceful, calm and quiet. Internal harmony captures the state of mind that include balance and harmony. So, these are certain terms or certain ways of defining happiness in which harmony, mental peace, balance and peace of mind or inner harmony are important terms, or that way actually inner world is highlighted more than the external world to get happiness. So, these are the ways to define happiness in psychology. I think you are well equipped now with various models of happiness in which we have highlighted on subjective well-being, on psychological well-being, on social well-being and then certain models in which we combined these unique modules and highlighted new models like mental health continuum, PERMA model, and then I think various borrowed ideas from Indian psychology which are defining to some extent and correlated with the happiness we discussed, and that is these are Indian perspectives, and then Asian perspective in which we highlighted inner harmony, peace of mind, etc. This topic will be continue in next classes. Thank you.